and welcome to Power Reflections, a proud member of the Duff Network, where we reflect on Wildbow's most righteous work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we are coming at you live in the Duff Media Discord. Hey, if you want to get into the Duff Media Discord, go to duffmedia.com/discord. You can join in these live recordings and, type stuff into chat, and we'll respond to it sometimes, and that's a pretty good system.
Yeah, we honestly get a bunch of great thoughts from chat every week. I'm really glad we've started doing this.
Yeah, 100%.
And speaking of, do pay attention if you are one of the people who comes along to these. Next week, I believe, or you guys up north are switching daylight savings soon, or at least the Americas are. So we're not changing our time, which means the time will change for you. So if this is like 4 p.m. now, I think it'll be like 5 p.m. or some shit. I don't remember which way it goes.
Check your clocks,
Yeah.
or if this is enough of a motivation for you, just don't change your clock for daylight savings anymore, and everything else will be on the wrong time, but we'll stay consistent.
Yeah. What's more important in your life, this
Yeah,
or
exactly.
literally everything else? But the event will be listed like on our Discord and also on the Doof calendar at the time that we're doing it, and those like adjust for your time zone.
Yes,
So that'll tell you
that
when
may
it actually
change
is.
for you. So just keep an eye on it. The other thing to take note of is we've just announced the next Doof fan art contest.
Yeah.
We're doing a fan art contest with some of the other shows on the network, or mainly the otherverse show on the network. And the theme for this one is Takeover. I mentioned it with doing this with the otherverse show, but this is fan art from any Wildbow work
Yes.
that exists.
Yeah, well, it just so happens that the only two Wildbow podcasts at the moment are both Otherverse themed, but it's a complete Boalition fan art contest.
Yeah. So the theme is Takeover. Feel free to interpret that however you want, but that's the theme. You've got until April Fool's Day, basically, to get in your entries.
And we've already got one, which came in crazy fast, so props to that person. Usually they all arrive with about 10 minutes to go. This one arrived very quickly after we, released it.
Yeah. Good on you getting your submission in very quickly.
I envy that amount of like deadline maneuvering.
Yes. There's a cash prize, and there's also the prize of, bragging rights, etc.
Yeah. Mostly the cash prize, though.
But yeah, so you can check out the website for more info on that, duffmedia.com, obviously. Now, should we get into the show, Elliot?
Yeah, we got two chunky Avery chapters.
Avery chapters this week, yes.
The first one is the longest chapter by like 1,000 words. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Bo continues to beat his record. So this long first chapter begins with Avery chatting with Rook, who's famous for losing wars, about the current war and how she's not optimistic about it.
Yeah, I feel like we've been talking for a while now about how Rook has sort of been struggling to balance the fact that they're like trying to fight in a different way, and she keeps like the only reason she came and joined Miss here was because Miss was trying something new and Rook saw promise in that. But she also, every time she tries to do stuff, she like falls into this pattern she's gotten stuck in, which just continues to be hilariously ironic that the Oni is stuck in a pattern. But yeah, I mean, obviously we get hints from the page later in this very chapter that Rook is on the verge of doing something real dumb. And we're definitely getting primed for a bit of a culmination of Rook's arc, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. We'll have to see where that goes. I mean, like, Rook makes allusions this chapter to the fact that she wants to be back to try and foil Musser when he makes his lordship claim. So presumably that's going to be the culmination of Rook's arc, will be her attempting to foil that claim and failing, maybe? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, or as the page says, if she succeeds, but it's because she's doing it, Charles's way or something, is that really a victory? Like, that feels like, I mean, yeah, Charles is fighting the fight that it feels like the Oni were doing. And I'm so excited to see Rook either fuck up and stay with this pattern or break out of it and realize that she needs to like stop fighting like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for all the shit we give Rook about this, she is clearly putting in a lot of hard work here to try and
Yeah.
help Kenneth. So she's doing her best. But yeah, it's I don't know. We'll see. Her pattern is entrenched, you're right, and it's a pattern of losing when she tries to fight
Yeah.
this fight, which is just not great.
And the annoying thing is, like, she knows that. Like, she's the one who identifies that she always loses, but she still also can't not. Like, I kind of understand. Like this, like in a weird way, she emblemizes the problems with the patterns in this world and in like our real world, where it's like you know that you have like an unhealthy behavior, an unhealthy pattern you keep falling into, but also you can't stop but do it over and over again.
Mm.
Like I just find it so terribly hilarious that it's Rook who defined her own pattern is stuck like that more than many other people we see. Um,
Yeah, you would think she'd be able to get past it, but no.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, like to your point, you're right. She is working very hard. It's just kind of like she's working hard, not smart, I guess. Like
Mm.
yeah, I don't know, but you can't blame her because she's running up north at the moment to stop a lordship claim up there because she doesn't want to cede that ground. And I mean, we keep learning that these lordships are permanent. Like, if somebody secures the lordship, you can't take it away. Seemingly,
No,
like that's
it's yeah.
unreversible. So at the same time, it's really hard to criticize her for not wanting to cede that ground as part of like schemes that are kind of a long shot because it's like
Mm.
every lordship claim that they lose is ground that is in a way permanently lost.
Yeah, it's yeah, but like once they've lost the claim, it's well, I've been seeing a few predictions from people that like the Kennedys are going to define a new type of lordship or something, which is
Yeah.
possible because we've got a lot of like trying to change the status quo, right?
Mm.
So
I'm also seeing a lot of predictions around like, changing the seal or like eroding the seal by making them not permanent or something and weakening it.
yeah,
Yeah.
especially because like obviously Charles is a lord and lordships counter lords, right? So
Oh,
like
so he's a
there's
judge.
a judge, sorry, yes. And uh, so there's kind of a natural inclination to kind of make predictions around, like, well, if there was a lord, Charles's power would be gone anyway. And it's very interesting. I mean, it makes us, um, it makes us just be in between Charles and Mussa, like two fighting dads, and we're trying to pick a
Yeah.
side.
Yeah, I know it just because I at this stage I don't really buy any of the theories around like weakening the concept of lordships. Like, it feels like the
Mm,
seal is so entrenched, and we've heard so much about how it's like immovably entrenched. Where we are now, I don't see that changing. But also, like the way lordships were introduced as a very permanent thing at this point in the story, like it feels like it was a very important puzzle piece that Wildbow handed to us in like Arc 14, or I think it was even later.
mm,
But it was basically like, hey, here's the end game, and note that even if they win, like, because what it really established with the permanence thing is, it's like even if they beat Mussa, like this is bigger than him or his organization now, because those lordships still exist.
mm.
So there is kind of this sense where even if they totally defeat Mussa and completely eradicate his entire organization, that's not a like a win-win because they've
He's
still
already claimed
lost
all.
all
Yeah,
this
exactly.
of this ground permanently. So it feels
Yeah.
like in chasing what feels like a proper win, we're all theorizing how they'll like undo the seal, and I just don't see how we get there yet. So it's like,
No.
I don't know. If Charles ever fucking wakes up from his nap and does something, maybe we'll find out. Like, where is this guy? Fucking do something.
Maybe the answer lies something. I don't know. I mean, like the concept of lordships inherently has inherent problems that just can't be solved. But I wonder if there's a
Yeah.
way to do like, like Thunder Bay um, had another in charge, as well as having a council kind of supporting it. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if there's a way to kind of set that as the definitive template for lordships a bit more tangibly, which would mean that like there could be a more benevolent system of self-government in each of these lordship areas where you
Yeah.
elect a mixed council of practitioners and others, or whatever it is, you know
Something
what I
more
mean?
democratic. Yeah.
Yeah, like, obviously, the current lordship system that Muster is proposing is effectively having them all swear fealty to him, which is not what we want, but
It's more
maybe there's a way to
feudalistic.
salvage lordships somewhere, yeah. Because, obviously, the judge system also isn't perfect, as we're seen by
No.
the first half of this story, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah, I don't
reminds
know.
me of, like, talks like this feel like talks, like, when you think about, as Canada and Australia are both still British colonies,
Mm,
and this is true of England itself as well, right? Like, the Queen is still the monarch, but, like,
true.
from a functional standpoint, she does fuck all. Like,
Mm.
all of the actual power has sort of been ceded to Parliament. And I think it's like, technically, according to the law, the Queen could turn around and be like, nah, fuck Parliament, they're out or whatever. But
Yes, but that would obviously cause a lot of
yeah, she couldn't actually
anti-monarch
do that.
problems. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, like, that to me feels like the end game. And this feels like what people are talking about with the different sort of thing. If you can start to establish that precedent of like a
Mm,
shift towards something democratic where the lords continue to give over their power. And so, maybe Musser actually constantly doing his feudal thing is establishing the precedent for this more, yeah, British style democratic thing where it's like the lord is just kind of a figurehead that doesn't actually matter and the parliament is what matters or something.
yeah, but I mean, to get to that point with the British monarchy, it had to go through a lot of colonialism. So I guess that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. I mean, like,
Mm,
absolutely. But we're already there, right? Like, this part of Canada is mostly colonized by Musser. I feel like he's taken 80% of the state or the
mm,
province.
yeah,
So, like,
yeah,
we're
that
already
ship
at
has
that
sailed.
part.
Yeah,
Now we need to get to the part of like, okay, like, yeah, can we do this better?
yeah, yeah. It's interesting trying to figure out what the trying to figure out what the actual win condition for the Kennedians is here is
Yeah.
tough when they've already lost all these lordships. Like, it's clear that stopping Musser isn't enough.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing with the story here is like it felt like at the end of arc 14,
Mm,
in 14.6, the Kennedy is very much like Charles is our enemy. We're going to figure out a way to fight Charles, and now we
mm,
got 14.z with like Musler and stuff, and it was like, oh, so that's also the baddies. And then since then, it's just like shifted more and more towards Musler to the point where we
yeah,
haven't even really heard from Charles for like three
Charles
arcs.
has really been a bit of a
Yeah.
loser as the judge, hasn't he?
Um,
Um,
But, like, this is the thing, yeah, is it's kinda like when you're talking about, like, the end game or the win condition for the Kenneteers, I'm looking at, like, not just beating Musser and, like, getting his org to stand down, but, yeah, then you've got the permanent lordships, also Charles and Marisica, and, like, there's still so much to do.
yes, yeah. Um, so yeah, I guess we'll have to keep an eye on that as it progresses. But
Mm.
the rest of this chapter, or the next big chunk of this chapter, is Avery and Jude teaming up and going through a bunch of paths. We start with Avery calling Jude for info on how to get to where Miss is, and he decides to escort her. And they meet up on the Falling Oak Avenue, the first of the paths that we see this chapter.
Yeah, and, I mean, obviously, it's gone by the end of this week's chapters, but I so enjoy the relationship that Jude and the rest of the Garricks had with Avery, like where he
Mm,
like picks up the phone and he's like, "Oh no," and then he's like, "I don't think that's a good idea," and then you hear his mum in the background, and then he's like, "How can I help?" Like just the hilarious whimsy to uh, Jude and Avery's relationship is such a fun start here, and I'm sad to see it go.
mm, yeah. Yeah, you're right. They had a fun dynamic, and it will have been altered by the end of these chapters. We'll see where it can get back to. Um, yeah, I do like the structure of this majority of the chapter where it's like
Mm,
bit of path exploration, bit of Jude and Avery kind of, we flash back to them planning what they're going to do to get through this bit of the path. It's very like we get some chaotic vibes of like what's going on. We get a bit of information on what's going on, and then we get a bit of like Avery and Jude being very competent and getting their way through the path. It's just quite a fun structure.
yeah, I completely agree. Like it's one of those. It's very heist Ocean's 11y sort of like
Yes.
cut back and forth, but it's one of like this is just a really good like the reason it feels so natural is because this is just a really good use of it. Because I think if you tried to dump all the path knowledge on us at the start, my eyes would have started to glaze over. Like, I'm that sort of person who, when you try to explain the rules to a board game after you've given me about three, my brain's already full and it stops
Yeah.
taking it in. And that would
Yeah,
have
you
been,
gotta break it
yeah.
up
So
with
I
some
love
actual,
this,
yeah.
yeah, the format of like show us the situation, give us the rules, then we see them in action and like repeating that. Yeah, just it feels so natural in the moment.
Yeah, it's it's a great way to do it for sure. A very solid structure to make sure that you're not lost with like, 8 different path descriptions, or I guess it would be like 5, but still.
Yeah, yeah.
I also love, just while we're in the Falling Oak Avenue, the kids that almost kill Avery by throwing child's paste and glitter into her eyes. Like, consistently, something I think is very funny is the threats on the path so often are just like really mundane things that, because of the wild situations that you're in, become incredibly dangerous.
Yeah,
Like,
you I mean, yeah,
gl-
you're right. It's just
glitter here is enough to almost kill Avery, just because, of course, she's falling through buildings in the sky. Like, it's
yeah.
incredibly dangerous situation. So any minor like attack is very, very wild.
Yeah, I don't know. I just loved it. Wait, I mean, something that we haven't really covered in the notes, but is just worth saying is just how like fun and like action packed and kinetic all these paths are. Like looking at our notes for like the burning daylight later, we barely brought up just how fucking wild of a concept it is.
Mm. Yeah, a lot of wild concepts in this chapter, aren't there?
Yeah, and obviously this all ties into like the page is getting ready to sort of set us up with the idea that the paths are just like risky shortcuts.
Mm.
And Falling Oak Avenue seems like a great example of that.
Yeah, yeah. It's I mean, yeah. Every single one of these paths that they go to this chapter is fucking hectic, and I'm looking forward to getting into all of them.
I just also,
Um,
sorry, I love the car ride. Like we didn't talk about the fact that Soot Sleeves just drives her to Falling Oak Avenue on like a crazy car ride. That's hilarious.
yes, you're right. That is very good. Actually, I want to bring out one other thing here, which is like the choice of paths that we go through. When I was reading this chapter for the second time, it kind of clicked to me that there's a real escalation in danger on each of these paths. Like, each path we go to is cumulatively more and more dangerous, right? Ending with like the I forgot what it's called, the Killer Three Sons path. Um, but they're dangerous in very different ways. And something that really occurred to me is like, I think the Falling Oak Avenue is the one that is like the most overtly dangerous, or where the danger is least obfuscated. You know what I mean?
Mm,
We get to ones like the Commons and the Watched Way, and those are very like, um I don't know, like, the danger there is really kind of abstracted out. It's not you're gonna
yeah,
splat into a building. It's, if you really, the danger in the Commons, for example, is if you're not careful, you're gonna get too many rules on you and then you're fucked, right?
yeah, yeah,
Um, and similar with the Stuck in Place at the very end, where it's like, it's so the danger from it is so like high level that you can just get stuck there infinitely, and it's like a weird giant escape room, and you might never even figure out what the danger is that you fucked up. Like, I don't know,
yeah,
I just thought it was really interesting, because especially because Avery and the Page of Sons talk this chapter about, and Avery's realization in this chapter is like, the danger of the paths is always like you're swinging from a thread, right?
yeah.
But it's just hidden from you by levels of whimsy. I just is very interesting that we kind of see the progression of overt danger to more abstracted, hidden by whimsy danger over the course of the chapter. I think it's a really cool like evolution and representation of what the page is doing.
Yeah, well, and because there's like a well, it's just a matter of variety because immediately after talking to the page in the comments, then she goes to the burning daylight one, which is,
Mm,
I would argue, back to the sort of overt danger because there's like all
mm,
these suns flying around, and if you get caught in their beams, you explode and die.
mm.
Um, so it's like, yeah, we kind of get like. this recurring thread of seeing just all the different sorts of like danger, but you're right. They all kind of map to what he's talking about. Like Falling Oak Avenue, very simple. If you touch the ground, you die.
Mm,
But then the commons, you're right. It's so easy to get like trapped, and you're tracking these rules. It's just a different kind of danger.
mm, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I really like it as a representation of the Page of Suns.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Can we also talk about the fact Avery expresses frustration when Jude shows up because he's got his cousins with him, and that was sort of fair enough. But then one of the main reasons she cites as having a problem with this is she's like, they're younger than us, and someone younger than 14 probably shouldn't be like hurtling through endless sky and death traps like this. And I love the sort of like protagonist or child bias of like 14 is the cutoff for this. Like, of course, a 14-year
Yeah,
old thinks that. Whereas, like,
yeah.
me as like a 30-year-old dude, I'm looking at this and I'm like, no one. Well, first off, no one should be doing this, but like, definitely no one under the age of like 20 or something. Like, it's hilarious. It's a hilarious little character moment of just like absolutely a 14-year-old thinks the cutoff is 14 years of age.
Yeah, it's very funny. It's a very funny moment. As everyone knows, 14 is the age where legally you can fall through a giant endless sky, of course. No, it is very silly.
um, it's the last thing I really wanted to talk about on Falling Oak Avenue before we properly move on is so the ballerina doesn't show up as one of the others here, even though this is like her native home, which makes sense because we know she's with Miss. But also, like, how does that work? Like, because we know, for example, like the wolf is always on the Forest Ribbon Trail, and people always asked, well, what if the wolf was on the promenade with Avery? What would happen to people on the Forest Ribbon Trail? And I always thought that was like the wolf was bigger than that and could kind of superposition, be in multiple places at once.
Mm.
So is the ballerina the same, or like had she earned enough days off that she was allowed to chuck a sickie and go off with Miss, and like the path wouldn't call on her?
I feel like I really do feel like
Sorry,
if
just
you're
to be clear, I know the lost are chosen at random. I'm saying like, was there a guarantee the ballerina wouldn't
yes.
get chosen for this? Like has she called in a sick day, or is it like if she had been chosen, would she have been sucked away from Misk? Does she superposition?
No, I don't think it's a superposition. What I really think it is probably just like as a lost, a path lost, you want to be on a path, right? Because it gives you opportunities to gain power and potentially even get yourself unlost, right?
Sure.
And so there's probably a natural like jostling for being a path lost, which means if the ballerina is strong enough, she can go off and do something else. Someone else will fill the role because it's a great opportunity. And then if she's still got the strength, she can come back and reclaim her role, right? Um,
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Whereas, like, because the wolf is something a bit different because they're like the core part of their path. Like, we're talking about the rules for like the sometimes lost.
Yeah, I mean, even the wolf, I reckon the wolf could go and not appear on a path for somebody. It would just be the kind of thing they wouldn't do because they're very, like, want to get power and want to take that power from people as much as they can, right? Like, they've fallen
Maybe,
into
yeah,
their own pattern. I think they could, if they wanted to, break that pattern. It would just be very costly for them because it's a pattern that they've built over a long time.
maybe. I just got the impression that since the wolf is so tied to like being almost one of the pillars of the paths, a bit like the
Mm,
Page of Suns or
mm.
the child, that it feels like they're probably capable of superpositioning where like the ballerina might not be.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, what happens if two people try and walk the Forest Ribbon Trail at the same time, right? What's the answer
Mm.
to that? I don't know. Does the wolf have to quickly duck between two paths? Are they both on the same path? Mm.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know.
Um,
Sorry, I guess the other existentially horrifying side of this is, so okay, we know that like Avery's like friends with the ballerina, right? Like they high five in this chapter. They've hung out on the promenade. Like they're basically best friends.
mm,
But there's like that point in Falling Oak Avenue where all the others like turn hostile. If the ballerina had been conscripted there, does she like have to turn hostile? Like just and like what does that mean? Like does she get to go like can does she have the power to sort of be hostile but go easy on them? She just kind of has to like, "Oh, technically, I'm working against you," or does it like do their connections get poisoned and she hates them for a little bit? Like,
Mm.
sorry, I'm just asking a bunch of weird lore questions here. It's just I find this stuff fascinating to think about.
Mm.
Like philosophically, there's horrifying implications depending on what the answer is too. Like the ballerina being hostile towards Avery on her native path.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I suspect the bell doesn't make the others hostile. It just lets them be hostile if they choose to be. You know what I mean? And of course, they would want to be because if they do good shit, they can get off the path.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that's all it is. That would be
Mm,
nice. I don't know if I believe it knowing this universe.
mm,
The
yeah,
bell, the evil bell tolling doesn't always give a choice. Maybe.
yeah, fair enough. Um, so yeah, Avery arrives in the Commons and is immediately set upon by a group of young others who aim to trip her up with dangerous rules.
Yeah, and like this is just straight up terrifying. This is a horror section. Like
Mm,
even their aesthetics are creepy. They got the fucking "Are you my mummy" gas mask going on. I think one girl's face is buttons, like that movie.
yeah, there's a
Coraline,
great
that's it.
aesthetic here. Um, Also, Avery plays it so cool here, right? Like,
Yes.
if I was Avery, I would be freaking out and going into fight mode way quicker. Avery's like playing it cool, and then she just kind of like looks at her armband, expecting that to be enough. And it is, in fairness, Avery is totally right about it. But I would have been like freaking out and being like, "Oh no, check out my armband. Is that helpful? If not, let's fight." It. I don't think I'd make a good path.
No. Yeah, I would have been like catatonic in the fetal position on the ground pretty quickly in this situation, I think.
Mm.
Um yeah, I don't have this in me. I don't understand people like Avery who look at the paths and have experiences like this and think more of this, please. I want to be comfy in my domain.
Yeah. Yeah. Being a practitioner would be the worst.
um, I do really like jumping ahead a little bit. Avery thinks back on this moment a bit later and sort of goes, "Wow, that was scary. They were essentially binding me by enforcing these rules on me. I better make sure I don't do that to any Lost because that was awful." Which is like just a really good takeaway from that situation. Like I feel like we've just seen so many interludes from practitioners like Millie, like Eloise, like Liz, who I almost feel would have the opposite takeaway, and they'd be like, "Those others tried to attack me. I better start attacking first, so I'm never in that position again." I just love that Avery's the sort of person who experiences somebody kind of doing something terrible to her and thinks, "Wow, I'd better make sure I never do that to anyone."
Mm. Yeah, you're right. It's I'm glad that she keeps taking away the right lessons from these
Yeah.
interactions.
Um,
Yeah.
like, because in a way, you could almost say like that's what this path feels like it is. Like because the Lost all have these weird rules that they operate on. Kind of all others do, but it's most prominent with the Lost. Like they've all got weird rules enforced on them by the universe, and this is their opportunity. Like this place exists for them to be able to turn that back on you a little bit. And
Mm.
here, the practitioners get a bunch of weird rules that the Lost enforce on them. Like that's what this place is, and it's like Avery feels like she's maybe the first person who's come through here and actually understood the lesson of this place.
Mm.
Which is, yeah, like this is what it's like to be a Lost with all these weird rules enforced on you by the universe.
Yeah, true. It's a yeah, it's it's a good way to I don't know, put the shoe on the other foot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um So yeah, Avery finds the Garricks here, but is approached by the Page of Suns. They have a brief conversation as Avery has her test.
A test, I think. I don't know. It's we'll get to that. Yeah, I mean the page is like great because like the gravity of his presence is already like I felt it. Like the second the Page of the Suns showed up, I was like, holy shit, this is huge. And I kind of love that I'm having that reaction despite the fact as an idea, he's only been introduced very recently and actually hasn't had that much of the text dedicated to him. He's just like invaded all of our brains to the point where I was like, oh shit, like, yeah, he's already such a big deal.
Mm, yeah, yeah. Page of Suns, a very interesting character. It's a real. it's a real. He's here to for Warbo to taunt us with world building stuff that's just beyond our grasp.
Yeah. Um. So before we do quickly get to the Page of Suns and Wildbow teasing us with all this bullshit,
Hmm.
I forgot, jumping back to the comments. I just loved how hilarious. Like we see Finn here again, and he's being hassled by this woman she's just building a bunch of rules around him eating like her pie,
Mm.
and it was just a funny comedy beat to really relieve the tension after like the horror of Avery almost being bound and killed by this group of others. Now we see like what the other side of this can be, which is just this woman being like, "Eat my cherry pie. It's delicious. Try to enjoy it."
Yeah, it's funny stuff.
But yeah, sorry. So
Uh,
yeah, back to the page and his. I mean, there's this hilarious moment where like there's all the focus on like the A test versus my test sort of stuff, and that really just felt like Walbo kind of either teasing us about not understanding his hint from a few weeks ago or trying to reinforce it. If he was trying to make it clearer what it was about,
mm.
I didn't get it. But
Yeah,
I choose to believe it was him just being like making it textual and kind of dunking on us as he did it.
I think there's some keys here for sure.
Yeah.
There's the focus on the my versus thee and the personalization of paths feels obviously very important to me. I don't know. I'm interested. Like the Page of Suns to me, it's making me think about like there was a lot of theory crafting previously about Pisces um and like the personalization of the relationship with Pisces, and it made me wonder. And obviously, the wolf is personalized as well. It made me wonder: is the Page of Suns personalized to people? And if so, what does that
I,
mean?
I think we were explicitly told he isn't, and that's kind of one of the special things about him on the
Yeah,
paths is that his appearance is essentially universal.
yeah. I don't know. I don't trust that. Like, I don't trust that.
Okay. I mean,
The
fair, yeah.
fact that he cares so much about the tests he delivers being like personalized, and he so clearly is like my test, you know what I mean? It's I don't know, I feel like he's not, maybe it's not about his appearance so much as it is like the problems that he is posing to people.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess to sort of get into like what he talked to her about. Essentially, yeah. I feel like it comes down to my guesses of what happened with Hazel and Pisces have all sort of surrounded this idea that it's a bit of a like meaning of life situation. Like
Mm,
it's something nearish to the realm of like I don't know, finding the answer to life, the universe, and everything, or like happiness or some shit. And so,
mm,
like, and things like the personalization feel like they lean into that for me because it's a bit like that answer's different for everyone. Like, what completes someone is a bit different for everyone. Like for Hazel, maybe she needed like a partner she could trust, like Pisces or whatever. For Avery, it might be something different because she already got Snowdrop.
mm,
So it's a bit like if the answers he's guiding people towards are a bit like meaning of lifey, it makes sense that it's just a slightly unique thing for every person.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, I don't know, who knows, but it's interesting to think about, uh and it's there's a lot of theory crafting that we
Yeah,
can go to from here.
yeah. It's sort of like just when I thought I was done theorizing about Pisces crap, this chapter happened, and I was like, well, here we go again.
Mm,
I
yeah.
I do like though when the page like first comes up to Avery, he's sort of like, telling her I can give you these fundamental truths or whatever. And Avery's like, I'm honestly not really in any sort of place to handle fundamental truths. I just want to save my town and stop bad people. It's like
Mm,
because that's usually the sort of thing I fucking hate in a protagonist. I hate when a protagonist is given like the keys to the kingdom. They're like, no, you don't understand. I just want to save my son or something. And I love how it didn't bother me here because we're very attached to the stakes in Kennet too,
mm,
and also just like it just felt so perfectly Avery that she's like, "Look, keys to the universe, that's cool and whatever, but like, can it help me save my friends?" It's just
mm.
it's very Avery, and she's the most frustratingly delightful sort of protagonist.
Yeah, yeah. She's she's very wonderful. And she does pretty well here, seemingly.
Yeah.
Maybe Avery is right that when you're 14, suddenly you're very knowledgeable because she does really good. She does there's a part where she fails, seemingly the bit
Mm,
where she talks about like the human centricness of the world. Um, which is interesting. But other than that,
yeah.
even the fact that the Page of Sons is here talking to her seems to be a pretty, like a pretty good marker that she's doing some good stuff, maybe, or
Yeah.
really bad stuff.
Hazel had to wander around for 33 years before she got a visit. Like, Avery's been
Mm,
doing this for 6 months.
yeah.
Um, so, like, as long as she takes less than, what, like, 60 more years, she's still on track to beat Hazel's record.
Mm,
Yeah, I really like this first half, the part where she's doing well. I really, really liked her take of like, she says, "Oh, something or someone can be seen as unimportant or be ignored and still have an awful lot of value or meaning." And she
mm,
specifically ties it to herself during the awakening ritual, and I just really love that as like just good storytelling, like tying this, philosophy on the universe that Avery is espousing specifically to her character arc and where she used to be. It's just so good.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um,
But yeah, and then
what a
yeah,
character.
that's the human centricness.
Mm,
So it feels like the easy answer to take away from this is like my first thought. The first time I read Hundred Years Lost, I thought Pisces was like an alien,
mm,
and then I changed my mind. And it feels like talking like the human centricness is maybe leaning more in that direction of thinking of Pisces as like an other who has nothing to do with humanity or something.
mm,
But if I can reject this idea once again in favor of, because I have a very human centric view of the Otherverse. Like I've
mm,
always had the same understanding as Avery that like essentially most things, if not everything, in the Otherverse sort of come from humanity to some degree or are shaped by it.
mm,
I wonder if there's an interpretation of like the moment where Avery might fail isn't the part where she says everything's human centric, but she says, "Oh, the fact that everything seems to start from us and come from us kind of explains why we're so self-centered."
hmm,
Whereas you could almost make the case if humanity is like shaping all these events and realms so substantially, it gives us a bit of a duty of care. So
mm.
maybe the failure point wasn't the human
It wasn't
centric
the
part,
human centricness.
but the fact that it's like, oh, that's why, like, that's our excuse rather than like acknowledging that as the people who spread all this stuff, maybe they really have more of a duty of care to all these realms.
Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. Like, I definitely am with you on the human centricness, and so this feels like a conflict to me. But it's not. Maybe it's not. I don't know. Maybe it's not necessarily human centricness as it is like. And we're getting back into aliens here, I think. But like, this it's centered on things that possess sapient thought. You know what I mean? Like not humans per se, but sapiens, right? And so if there's alien societies out there or whatever, humans because of their human centricness just haven't been able to access them or get into them just because of their preconceived notions about humanity being the center of the universe, you know? So like
Yeah,
there's alien otherverse and alien practice out there, but humans in their self-centeredness, their spirit, the spirits. I don't know. I don't know how it works.
yeah. I mean, I
I
like,
don't think that's gonna happen either. But I'm just trying to figure out, like, you know, how can we put it together?
yeah, like I mean, because the other thing, and I kind of see this as like a subset of the alien theories, is if you sort of take it as like, yeah, this is a world where like the spirits represent like ideas, right? And so like
Yes.
all these human adjacent realms are like have been shaped from us because we have ideas and shape ideas, and then that creates others who have their own ideas and shape them, and that
Mm,
blah 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 blah. The paths are like the edge of all the ideas we've had. So like what lies beyond the paths would be ideas that haven't yet been touched by humans. And if there's others
mm,
associated with that, like, it could just be that like Pisces represents an other or others that are ideas that humanity hasn't yet considered or hasn't
mm,
touched. And I just see that as essentially equivalent to the alien idea in a little bit because what like w- if an other is from outside humanity, it's kind of by definition alien. So, um, yeah, I don't know that. I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
these are all thoughts we had back in Hundred Years Lost too, and I'm just going in circles.
Well, so I think Aziza did it summed up what I was trying to say in a much better way, which is saying perhaps the universe is much larger than we realize, but we only see the stuff closest to humanity, like the spectrum of visible light, right?
Yeah.
And so one way to take that is other types of sapiens, like aliens. But there are other things in the story that are sentient, e.g., others, right? Like
Mm.
maybe the thing that we're not considering is humans. The sentience of humans might not be the only thing that has impacts on the other verse. The sentience of others might also have these impacts. It's just that because the world is practitioner centric, that's not. I don't know that doesn't
See,
exist. That's not
I
a focus.
I still feel like all of those others tend to be human adjacent to the point where I count them under the same bucket. Like,
Well, all the ones that we have seen because
oh yeah,
we
yeah,
are following humans, right? So yes,
yeah,
like goblins, fae, etc. These are kind of ideas cast off by humans that have
yeah.
become really into their own narratives or really into gross things or whatever, right? Like
So
etc.
now we're sort of back to the line between the concept of an alien versus an alien other
True,
is
true.
essentially a meaningless distinction.
You're
Like
right.
it's
That's a fair point.
um what is what is the point of like the definition of other, because other, like, they're others, they're not humans, so it's kind of
Mm.
like an alien other. It's like we're at the point where we're talking semantics essentially.
Sure, sure, sure.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know, I feel like these were all ideas that we had early on and then discarded, and I can't remember why I discarded it, but I'm sure.
Mm.
Um,
Because it's too complex and we aren't going to find
yeah.
the answer.
I don't
Now,
remember why I discarded it after reading 100 Years Lost, but I'm sure there was a reason.
here's a much simpler question, Elliot. Is there a connection between the fact that Avery speaks to the page of suns and then goes to the burning daylight where there's three suns? You know what I mean? Like, is that a coincidence? Doubt it. Page of
Probably.
suns is up to something. Am I right?
Um, Also, another point to consider,
Mm.
Snowdrop says that you can be like a geologist with a rock.
Hmm.
What did she mean? What is the opposite of a geologist with a rock? Like, the full context is the page says you couldn't build an atom bomb without understanding the principles of the atom, or you could, but it would be difficult. And
Mm.
Snowdrop says, like a geologist with a rock.
And it seems to be analogous to a monkey with a typewriter. Yeah, did it says it's effectively a geologist without a rock, which, yeah, you're right. Good point.
I like a caveman with a computer from
Yeah.
Nineteen. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. What's the opposite of a rock, Elliot?
The sky?
Yeah, I'm
A
thinking like
cloud?
a glass of water. Okay, and now what's the opposite of a geologist?
I don't know, like a good person? I don't know
uh,
why I'm dunking on geologists. I have nothing against geologists. A vet,
hmm,
that's a fun one.
a vet? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, no, like a miner, somebody who hates rocks. They obliterate
Oh
rocks.
yeah, okay. I like that. Yeah. Um so what do we
Anyway,
think it is then? It's a miner with a cloud.
yeah. That old
I mean, I
saying,
guess
that old
that
chestnut.
works. An astronomer? Yeah, an astronomer with a
Cloud.
cloud. But see, if we reverse both of geologist and rock, then it's going to end up making sense again. Anyway, um, so what do we? Oh yeah, so the burning daylight. All right, yeah. I mean, it's dangerous, but they make it through without losing too much. They just lose a Garrick, which
Yeah.
effectively this chapter is the story of Avery losing connections to every single Garrick that she knows slowly over the course of each
Yeah.
path.
There's Garrick's to spare. As Wondercand says, Garrick's, there's a lot of them, but they're low impact.
Mm,
So you lose a couple. What does it matter?
yeah, exactly right.
Um, this Burning Daylight feels like the most video gamey path that we see in this chapter.
Yes.
Like, I know all the paths have been a little bit video gamey, this whole story. That's obviously a connection a lot of people have made, but like maybe because I predominantly play platformers, but this was the most where I was like, oh, this is a level of a video game for sure.
Mm. Yeah, no, I agree. It feels like it would be really fun to go through if you didn't, have to deal with all the suns.
Oh, Malia brought up the three body problem as an inspiration for this path too. That's a great thought. I hadn't put that together, but I like that.
mm, mm. But yeah, like the thing I like about this path in this section is rather than solving it with math and calculations, Avery effectively solves it by being friendly, and that is enough to help her get through this. And I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, that like one other kind of takes a bullet for her, so to speak, so that she can pass through one spot.
Mm, yeah, yeah. It was good stuff. A classic Avery way to solve a problem.
Especially, I just love how she comes up and like she sees the big elephant turtle one who's like a dickhead, and then
Mm.
later on she like bitches about it to this other, and that's like part of what gets the other on board. Is the other's like, oh yeah, I fucking hate that guy. Um, it's just it's also like hilariously benign how friendly she is.
Mm, yeah, it's great. They can be so friendly. Others, if you're friendly to them.
And the ones who are just there, I think it's actually this woman is one of the ones who's just there to get a tan. I just love that.
Mm, yeah,
Like
best
you
way to
can pretty
do it.
much guarantee no other practitioner has asked them why they're here.
I mean, yeah, it is. I guess a wild thing to do to come here just to burn yourself over and over again in the hopes of getting a tan.
Yeah, but as they point out, what else are you going to do if you're like an immortal other who can't change?
Mm, yeah. Um, but yeah, so they then go through the watched way to reach Miss. Unfortunately, she's being held captive by some Wondercanders who Avery is forced to bargain with.
Yeah, and to touch on the watched way quickly, as Avery does, it's mentioned in the preamble that the things watching you in the watched way are usually like crows or cats or something. But for Avery, they're like little kids. And I just love this as like a beat because it has been like a subtly recurring beat in the story that like young children and goblins always think Avery is cool as hell. And she's never really like been comfortable with it. So of course, like the creepy version of the watched way for her is a bunch of little kids staring her and watching her do every little thing. So
Mm,
that's kind of what keeps happening to her in real life.
yeah, yeah, that's a good call. Yeah, Fran points out that this chapter is full of children. They're everywhere on the paths.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. They're the like childlike, whimsical realm. Well,
Mm,
it's not quite a realm. I don't know what the word is.
yeah, yeah. Um, but yeah, so we meet Wondercand, and I really liked them. They're exactly as corporate as we were expecting. They're like cold and corporate, but not like overly cruel or any more cruel than any other practitioners, I guess, which is like a low bar, but still. Like it doesn't
Yeah,
seem like they're openly evil. They're just kind of corporate, and that is inherently kind of evil, I guess.
yeah, they're as evil as is required to like increase the bottom line, right? Like
Yes,
they're
yes.
not they're not cruel for the sake of cruelty, but they will be cruel if it is advantageous.
Mm. They're
Is
just
the vibe
thoroughly
you get.
practitioners, really, and it's
Yeah, like
great.
that. They feel like the Musser equivalents for the paths, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like when they first came up in Arc 16, I compared them to the like places like Google and Samsung where they have those like innovation departments where they're like they throw 100 engineers at an innovation problem and kind of corporatize innovation.
Mm,
And it feels like seeing them here, I feel very secure in that sort of read on them as a thing. They're very corporate, but also trying to do the paths in this very corporate way. Like they one of the things they reveal is they're only here to do paperwork. Like they need to apparently do a quota of paths and fill out some paperwork, which just feels so antithetical to everything about the paths.
mm, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I really like them because of this. Like, I like them
They're fun
as
baddies.
characters in the story. Exactly.
I like how even the page couldn't help but dunk on them. Like when the page was talking to Avery, he kept saying stuff like, "I'm not here to judge. I only consider. I don't judge." And then the second
But
Avery asked him about them, yeah, it was like the energy was like, "I don't like those guys." Like he didn't come out right and say it, but like if you read between the lines, he was like, "I don't like them at all."
mm,
Like as much as a being that doesn't judge people cannot judge people, he still judged them.
yeah, yeah. Um Yeah, it's great. It's great that the Page of Sons even is just like, yeah, I mean, whatever. They're powerful, so I've had to talk to them a few times, but they're pieces of
I
shit.
don't
I don't
like
expect they'll ever pass my test.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So Avery gets misreleased in exchange for promising to visit Milton at some point in the future, and they begin their ritual.
So the Milton thing, that's just like blatant sequel setup, right? That's
I
what it
hope
felt
so.
like
I
to
don't
me.
know. We'll
All this
see.
Page of Sun stuff and like the Wonder Can thing, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't really see how this fits in Pale, so hopefully it's setting up a prequel. That said, I've said the same thing about a lot of stuff during Arc 13, so who knows?
Mm,
But like it definitely feels like it like if the story is going to end, in the next like month or two in story, which it kind
mm.
of feels like it is at this rate, then this feels like setup for a future story that involves Avery.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. We'll see. I want more Wonder Cans.
Right?
So
Yeah.
that means I want this story to go on for a million years, I guess.
Well, that's like, yeah, we've got to we'll get all this Musser and Charles crap out of the way and free up the story to just focus on the paths and Wondercant.
Yeah.
We'll recruit Lucy and Verona. They're gonna pivot. They're finders now, and we're just going all in on the paths.
Yeah. That's just what the story's going to be from now on.
Yeah, actually, Musser, you can have Kenneth. We don't want it anymore. We're going to the paths. We're moving on.
Yeah. But yeah, so the moon's starting to drop. It's happening. On with the
Yeah.
show.
It's been so hard for me to not make any Majora's Mask references throughout these like last 5 or 6 chapters, but you've broken me here. Yeah, it just feels like we're doing a Majora's Mask with the way the sky is falling here,
Mm,
and
yeah.
because Majora's Mask is 100% a path, but
And because of the daily countdown, like,
yeah,
you know.
all these 3-day deadlines. There's 3-day deadlines everywhere. It's been so hard.
But let's go on with 17.11, shall we?
Yeah,
So yeah, Avery is studying the stuck in place, figuring out some of its riddles, and kind of starting to get a deeper understanding of it before it becomes vital to Kennet. And yeah, it all seems pretty straightforward. I think we could
yeah,
solve this puzzle if we needed to, Elliot.
yeah. I totally get it. I
Yep.
understood all the things. Avery was reflecting moons on glass, and it made sense to me.
Yep. It really, I don't know if you've played this game, Gorogoa, Elliot, but it reminded me a lot of that, like perspective
No,
manipulation to have things line up. It's a cool game. We'll check it out. It's kind
I
of like
think
the stuck in place.
that was the runner up in the game club like 3 times.
Oh yeah. Was it? Well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's very it gives me very path vibes actually, now that I think about it.
Yeah, that was basically the only thing I really understood from all this, because yeah, it was all like the second place. There was all this perspective shit going on, and I kind of never understood it as I was reading the chapter. All I understood was, okay, like perspective is key in this path.
Mm.
Like things move weirdly, like it's not Euclidean, like space basically. And I just like, it is one of those things where I'm like, oh, okay, this space, like this is a great place to attach to Kenneth then, like a place where your perspective matters. That feels so in tune with what Pale and Kenneth have been talking about.
Mm.
So even if I don't really understand how the perspective stuff works, I understand why, like thematically, it's appropriate.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. It's it's a wild place. It's a wild place to be.
And I really like the lore that it's like a giant dead thing.
Mm.
I don't know if we get told what that thing was.
Like a
I've just
dead
assumed,
god.
yeah, well, it's a Durusha thing,
Mm.
basically. But like it reminds me of you know how you get those like little microclimates around whale carcasses on the bottom of the ocean?
Yes,
There's like a
yes.
term for it. I forget what it's called, but like it reminded me of that, like this idea that something big can go out to the paths and die, and then a bunch of other stuff kind of gravitate to it and thrive and become something new.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I like that. The microclimate comparison. I think it's good. I think it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, before leaving, Avery decides it's the right thing to do to tell Jude about Miss and her, run-in with Garrick. Jude takes it relatively well, considering it's kind of a murder in self-defense. I don't know.
Yeah, the timing on this one from Ave. I mean, not that there was necessarily a better time. No, there were definitely better times, but yeah, this we'll be on this for a while, I think.
Yeah, I mean, like, do you think that Miss did anything wrong here? Not really, right?
No, and I don't think Jude does either.
Yeah.
like Jude kind of is still processing it, but I think
Mm.
even he's sort of like, okay,
He's more
you're
upset
saying
at
it's self
Avery for
defense.
lying than or
Yeah,
for omitting than at Miss. Yeah.
yeah. I feel like Jude. I really respected Jude even more after this whole conversation, which I didn't think was possible because I already thought pretty fucking highly of him. But
Mm.
like, yeah, it like he's incredibly fair to Miss. Like he's like he like does his due diligence and checks she's not manipulating him. And once she's kind of comes clean, he's like, okay, like I'm still processing this and this sucks, but like it seems to have been self defense and I get it.
Mm.
Yeah, he's really actually mostly just angry at Avery for keeping this in her back pocket while dealing with his family, which I think is like a super valid take on all this. Like, especially because like this is. I mean, okay. The thing about this that I think really fucks up with Jude is that he doesn't even feel like he can properly handle this with Avery because, like, professionally, she's so important to him and his entire family that he can't just like cut ties. And he eventually gets the courage to say, "Don't call me unless it's for business."
Mm.
But like he kind of has to work himself up to that because, like, yeah, the reason this is extra fucky for him is because they're so professionally tied that this personal issue
Yeah.
can't just be a personal issue.
Yeah.
And like, what's great about this is like the reason it affects him so much is because he's the kind of person you want to be around. Like, if he'd just been like, "Oh, well, then now you owe my family, and I can manipulate this," or like blah blah blah. Like, that's the very Muss's side take to this. Like, this is our arc talking about like where do we draw the line? Which people do we allow on our team? And
Mm.
Jude kind of leaves the team here because he's exactly the sort of person we'd want on the team. In that, why he hates this is because Avery like personally betrayed him.
Yeah. I'm optimistic that I don't know. Once Judas had time to process this, their relationship can recover a bit from it. But
Yeah, it'll take some time though, I think.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah, I love the idea that, yeah, like if Jude had been willing to kind of still be friends with Avery after this, it almost would have been a failure on his part because like that's like it feels like this is the very Avery thing to do is to like worry about the personal stuff. Like again, Jude just feels like the male Avery because what's upset him here is not the murder of his family. I mean, he's a little sad about that, but like the thing that's really cut him is the personal friendship side, and it's like that's such a good trait to have, but also the reason that now he won't talk to Avery for a while. And yeah, if he hadn't been like that, he would have been more like the sorts of people that we don't want the Kenneteers hanging out with.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, being a considerate person means that sometimes they need to consider the shitty things that you've done.
Like Eloise, for example, just as a
Yeah.
recent example, Eloise would totally be the sort who's like, "Oh well, better use this to my advantage. Like this hurt me personally, but now I can turn that to a professional advantage." And that just doesn't even occur to Jude. In fact, he's potentially harming his family's relationship with Avery by distancing himself, and I'm worried his family's
Mm,
going to have the terrible take of pushing him to use
yeah.
this against Avery. Um,
Yeah.
because like that's like the practitioner thing to do. And yeah, yeah, just the irony of we lost Jude because he's exactly the sort of person that we want to have around, and that this arc is telling us to choose people like this. Like and yeah,
Mm,
Avery is the one who fucked up.
yeah. Yeah. We'll have to see. We'll see how this student every situation resolves, but it won't be for a
Mm.
little while.
Oh, I also really like that Avery's apology takes the form of like, You deserved me to think about this more."
Mm,
I feel like that's a really just solid apology for what she did wrong, which is like she's
mm,
quite clear she wasn't like intentionally using this, which I think if she admitted she was, which she wasn't, but like if she had been,
yeah.
like that would have Jude would never talk to her again. But like she, as she said, she's just a bit of a ditz. That's becoming Avery's new word, and
Mm,
yeah, like she needs to think about these sorts of things more. And this ties back to what I was saying before about how my theory that like part of what she did wrong with the page was say, "Oh, if humanity touches all these ideas and these others and these places, we deserve to be self-centered." And the page's take might be more along the lines of, "No, you need to care about what's happening to them more. Like if you
mm,
are shaping these places, it's on your head a bit when you're not thinking of them."
mm. Yeah. 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 I like that as a reflection of the previous chapter.
And Sorry, I've just got two more small points from this area.
Mm.
First off, Biss uses the word anatopistic to describe the door to Kennet, which was a new word for me.
Give us the definition, Elliot. What does anatopistic mean?
So it's like something that's out of place. It's like anachronistic, but for space rather than for time,
Mm.
is how I describe it. Like, yeah, like so, rather than something being anachronistic, it's just so I guess like something. If you had a room where everything was pink and then there was just a blue door, that would be anatopistic.
I like what Lab's classist just said. Liz. Well, miss, you're now a practitioner.
Yeah, yeah. What was Matt's word again? Aphorism.
Yeah, which is not, I don't know.
That was another new word for me when that came up too. My vocabulary is being increased by this story.
Mm.
Although I don't know if I'll get to use an adapistic that often.
Yeah. Whew.
Um, yeah. Sorry. So one last thing before Avery yeets herself away from here. I- I- so she has this this goodbye conversation with Miss. Where basically Avery's like, "I want to help you. You were there for me on the Forest Ribbon Trail." And what I really wanted to talk about is Miss basically is like, "No, like you're fine. This is me almost making it up to you." Like Miss essentially brings up how she put like a fuckload on their shoulders by awakening them, like the three Kenneteers.
mm.
She gave them this like super important role and it came with like a lot of work and it's hurt them in a lot of ways. And so like her doing this is almost like she's putting her money where her mouth is a bit,
Yeah,
or like
yeah.
she did this to them, so she needs to be willing to do it herself. Like what kind of a shit leader or mentor would she be if she was willing to let them do it but not take this sort of plunge herself?
Mm.
And I think we've touched on that before, like a little bit in the podcast, but it really makes it feels a lot more powerful coming from Miss herself because we've seen earlier in this arc, Miss is one of those people who has blood on her hands by letting the Carmine die and stuff. And so this is like, her, I guess, redemption a little bit, or like, how she's acknowledged that what she did is wrong and she's trying to change and be better. Is she's like, oh, I, abducted three kids and put all this responsibility on their shoulders, and now I need to put myself in harm's way
Mm.
and make sacrifices of my own to
Yeah.
like support them. Like it's just this is Miss ensuring that she is the sort of person that Kenneth wants on their side, like, and that they should work with.
Yeah, it's a good call. Like she's putting her money where her mouth is, I think is the right way
Yeah,
to say it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like so, yeah. Go good on you, Miss. I think when we talked at the start of the arc about all these others in Kenneth with blood on their hands, it was a bit like you have to prove that you're doing better, and I don't think Toadstool has quite done that yet, but Miss I think has here for me.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Um but yeah, so Avery falls back to Kennet and reconnects with some of the things she's missed while she was away.
Yeah, and she also now has like a bit of a like no fall
No
damage
fall
boon.
damage, yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But one
like
that she's not willing to test too much because if it doesn't go
yes,
well, she's in trouble.
yeah, I think that's a good call to like use the Garrick's like special skills they have to test the limits of a boon like that. It's not one you want to find out when it's not working during the middle of a big test.
Yeah, yeah. But it's perfect for Avery because she does a lot of like wind spirit super jumps and stuff.
Yeah,
So I feel like it's a
she's going
good
to get
boon for her
a
to have.
lot of use out of this. I think this is
Yeah.
the most powerful boon we might have heard of from a path. I'm just going to put that out there.
Mm,
Like, if I had to
mm,
pick one boon out of all the ones we've heard about, I think this would be the one I'd go for. And you have to fucking work for it, is part of
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
the stuck in place is hard to get out of.
yeah.
But like, to no spoilers for parahumans and stuff, but this is effectively an even better version of like one of the Ward protagonists' sub powers.
Mm, yeah. It's seems that seems like a good boon. um, I want to call out this bit where the- Avery reconnects with Lucy, and Avery's like, "Oh, I screwed up something with Jude. I'll tell you later." And Lucy's like, "Oh, I've got to catch you up on stuff too. I'll tell you later." They all have things that they're like committed to telling each other later. It's it's pretty funny that they're just building up things that they, even though they're in their relationship's in a good spot at the moment, they don't want to tell each other because they think it'll mess with shit.
Well, there's too much to do, right? Avery's
Yeah.
got this very important date with her dad. Um, Meanwhile, like, yeah, Lucy did a murder, kind of. Like those things are of equal weight. Like, I love how Lucy kind of she can't quite let it fully go down. Like, she's like, "Talk to me after, right after, but do this." But then immediately, like, it's like she's trying so hard not to layer the pressure on, but also like she can't help it because there's a lot of pressure to put on.
Mm, yeah. Um, I think it's funny. They're just really cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Anywho, Avery heads off to have an uneventful and relaxing dinner with her dad, and yeah, it's very chill and relaxed, and nothing major happens.
Yep. Yeah. Just the amount of worry that we had going in that it would be an awkward corner dinner. No, I think we need to talk about the elephant in the room when it comes to this dinner, like just off the bat here,
Mm,
which is that Avery keeps calling this place an ice cream place, but it serves burgers and milkshakes. In what world does an ice cream place serve? Like, it's not an ice cream place if it serves burgers and milkshakes.
yeah, no, I
This is a
agree.
hill I will die on.
It's a bit strange. It's kind of just like a diner vibe, right?
Yeah, I was very much picturing a full diner, and I find it weird that Avery calls this an ice cream place. And this is the real issue that is brought up in this chapter for me. All that other
Mm,
moral shit doesn't matter. The definition of ice cream place has become the important discussion topic.
yeah. Nothing else during this dinner of importance happens.
No, this is all I want to talk about.
Um, so yeah, is it silly of Avery to think that she can go and have a normal dinner with her dad during this time? Because as we were getting up to this, I was kind of like, yeah, it's really busy. Maybe it'll be fine. And then I was thinking, like, no, I think there's a pretty good chance that if they go and have dinner, something bad will happen. Either because she's not there or somebody will track her down and something bad will happen. And then that's exactly what happens. And it makes me think Avery needs to watch a Spider Man movie so that she can learn the lesson of, like, you can't balance your magical world and your human world. It doesn't work.
um, God, I really like that Spider-Man comparison. I mean, so to be fair to Avery, I don't think because Lucy didn't actually tell her anything, so it's like I don't think
Mm.
Avery understood that there are like 70 practitioners invading the town right now. Like Avery
I feel
left
like
when it was
Avery
like
should know
8.
that.
Well,
Yeah.
but like Avery left when it was 8. For
Yeah.
all she knows, it's like, oh shit, there's so many practitioners here now. There's 15. Like, she doesn't know that she's like an order of magnitude off on how many practitioners are currently invading the town.
Mm.
I don't know. But like, yeah, also she agreed to do this dinner before the shit hit the fan. Um, so she kind of didn't have a choice.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. That's a fair point. It's hectic. I think we knew it was
Yeah.
going to get hectic, and it will soon. We'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I am
Um,
just looking at this next chunk of notes, but I've decided to save it for your bit later.
Fair
So
enough. But yeah,
talk about that
I thought it
instead.
was funny. Uh, Connor goes to Google what's going on in town and just finds Turtle Queen shenanigans, which I thought was wonderful.
Yeah, I wondered if like this is a really smart move too from the Turtle Queen because presumably it's still good karma to help protect innocence. Like, so in a way, this kind of helps strengthen the Turtle Queen that she's the one protecting innocence in this way.
Mm.
Um, I don't know. This is all part of my. I'm still on the like I'm terrified of the Turtle Queen train. So even her doing good things, I'm like, but this makes her more powerful, which makes her scarier.
Mm.
I feel like I'm just so unfair to the Turtle Queen. I feel like I'm being a terrible practitioner because I can't look past how scary she is to me.
Yeah,
Like I
you're
keep not
being
give.
one of these bad
Yeah,
practitioners.
I'm doing the opposite of giving her the benefit of a doubt. I'm continuously being
Yeah.
like, we can't trust her. Yeah, I don't know. Like honestly, I had the thought while I was reading this of like, oh, what if Charles isn't the devil Rook might make a deal with? What if it's the Turtle Queen? And then I was like, okay, that's definitely unfair.
No, yeah, the Turtle Queen is terrifying. And so she deserves to be side-eyed a bit sometimes.
Just watch carefully as she does stuff. She has a bad track record, so I don't think it's unfair to like let her loose on the town in a probationary sense, you know?
Mm, mm, yeah. But yeah, so we then get into this conversation with Avery and her dad, and it's like pretty good. Like Connor has broken the trust a bit that he can see Avery as just his daughter rather than as my lesbian daughter. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But he is trying to do that, and he seems like he's getting to that point. He seems to understand that following this conversation. So it's I don't know, promising. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, like, always been the hope with Connor is, like, even right back at Can We Talk About the Parents, like, he was stuffing up, but you kind of knew that he was trying, and I think we're finally starting to kind of reap the rewards of that a bit where, like, he genuinely hears and listens to and, like, accepts everything Avery says to him here in a, like, just a really positive way. Like, she just sort of explains to him, "I don't wanna talk about the problems that made me move because like, the fact that that was all we could talk about was the problem," and Connor's sort of like,
Mm,
"Oh, I hadn't understood that. Okay, fair enough. Let's talk about other stuff." Like, he just he
yeah.
does good.
He's listening.
Like, yeah, and, like, that's such an improvement over what we saw, and, yeah, like, that's the delivery on continuing to give him a chance in Arc 7 is he's yeah, actually turned it around a fair amount, and, like, I mean, also to Avery's credit, I think she's more willing to stand her ground and just explain this stuff to him. Like, I do think also previously Avery would have been, like, a lot more hesitant to just, like, go up to his face and be like, "No, this is the problem. You're not giving me my chance." Like blah 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 blah. And that's not like
Mm,
it's not fair that Avery has to be able to do that to get that time or whatever. But it's also a bit of a signal of her growth in a way that she is able to just like look him in the eye and tell him what he's doing wrong.
mm,
As much as it is like a sign of his character growth that he's able to actually hear that now.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah. He's he's doing all right. He's not a Brett, which is a great commendation for Connor.
Low bar.
The thing that I like about this is Avery's like, hey, I just want to talk about normal stuff and not about like the fact that I'm gay or whatever, right? And so that kind of steers them away from like Nora as a topic. And then so Connor starts asking about the only other things that are in Avery's life, which are all like magical things, like, oh, oh, what about this Matthew and Edith and blah, blah, blah. And Avery's like, no, 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 I don't want to talk about that. And it was kind of to me this moment of like, Avery, your life is basically consumed by the practice right now. What are you going to talk to your dad about? And then I love that leads into the idea that Connor might be becoming aware so that he and Avery can bond over magical things.
Yeah, you're right. They very quickly run out of shit to talk about because I mean, I guess she could have talked about her sport and shit more, but
Yeah, true.
yeah. No, I guess to finally touch on the whole Connor becoming aware thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, should we
it
talk about this before the end of the chapter?
okay,
That's where
okay.
it really lands for me.
I'll save it for then. Then so I've
Yeah.
just had to I've highlighted the paragraph I wrote above so I don't forget it later.
Um, yeah. Well, let's talk about it now. I mean, this chapter ends with. We'll come back to the fight with America in a second, but this chapter ends with Connor kind of starting to process what has just happened here, and
Yeah,
it's ambiguous, but it really does feel like Connor is more on the precipice than anyone else of becoming aware. And I'm just like, I really think it would be so narratively interesting if Connor becomes aware. Like how
yeah.
fucking cool it would be.
Yeah, I think like the story has shown time and time again that in normal circumstances, innocence is strong enough that like even after all this, like
Yes.
if Avery wanted to, she could convince him of stuff. Like give it a day, work with karma to like push the innocence, and you could probably smooth over this bump. I think it's quickly turning into the question of is that what the Kenneteers want to do?
Interesting.
Um, and yeah, I mean, also these aren't normal circumstances, so the fact like this place is knotted and all that might be making that harder than normal. But I'm almost interested. Like we've seen with Melissa, the Kenneteers have kind of embraced making someone aware in the past, and maybe that's a pattern they're going to double down on because yeah, it definitely like I think other people have brought this up too. Like we're bringing a magical side to the town. It makes sense to further increase connections between it and Kenneth above by having some more aware people like Melissa.
Mm,
And I think Connor is actually a prime candidate because, like, to get a bit meta, like these sort of coming of age childhood magic stories, usually like the whole conversation here with Connor is like Avery is sort of grown up and is able to talk to Connor more as an adult, and he hears her a lot better. And so this is like part of her growing up, and I kind of like the idea of then like continuing that concept with having her be the expert on the magic stuff and kind of bring him into that world, like flipping the script on the typical parent child
Mm,
relationship,
mm,
especially because like magic has in this story a lot been tied to like well the found the lost magic in particular has been tied to childhood and like the magic and whimsy of the world. So it's kind of like as Connor is becoming more open to more progressive ideas and listening to Avery more, she can like reintroduce this like good part of the world to him. Like I don't know, I think Connor is actually a great candidate. I never would have seen it coming, but when it happened, I was like, oh, this is like a perfect way to extend this Connor's journey of like becoming more aware of the world. Like, he's left like his, heteronormative ideals beside. He's becoming more aware of stuff, and this is the next step.
yeah, I think that's interesting. Like magic as a representation of him becoming more aware, and then it's aware with a capital A.
Yeah.
I think that's a fun thought.
And because like I think the typical way, like if I think about the shitty CW shows and stuff that I've watched where it's like kids with secret magic,
Mm,
usually when the parents find out, if it's not undone, through memory manipulation, it's usually either done for cheap drama or at best as this moment of kind of, the parent sees the child for who they really are and like it's like an acceptance moment.
yeah.
And I think it'll feel really earned in Pale. Like Pale's made us wait for it. Like, I think people were joking about Jasmine becoming aware in like arc 3. But like much like with Snowdrop and the familiar ritual, we've had to wait for it and it would feel earned. And then it would be this sense of like Pale's doing something a bit more interesting with it by having tied the magic to the concept of like childhood whimsy.
Mm,
Having Avery teach that back to Connor just feels like a really interesting idea thematically.
mm, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I really like that connection. I don't know. I just this is kind of what it is like. Like I was thinking about like it would be horrifying if Brett learned about magic. Jasmine, I think,
Yeah.
would be really interesting if she learned about magic because she would be interesting. She would kind of be supportive, but also this would give her a lot of reasons to kind of crack down on what Lucy's been up to. Whereas Connor is like, I feel like Connor, it would actually let him and Avery bond, but also he would. I think Avery would be able to convince him to not like crack down too much, and I think it would be like narratively really interesting. So I
Yeah.
don't know.
I
Yeah, it's
wouldn't have
interesting.
thought of it, but if you asked me to pick one parent to become aware, Connor is absolutely my top choice now that
Yeah,
like
now
it's
that
been
I've
dangled
seen
in
what
front
it
of
could be
us.
like. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Like
Um,
this conversation really sells why it's going to work.
yes.
Um,
Yeah. I don't think it's a done deal or whatever, but I think it would be
no.
really interesting.
Yeah, I hope that is the direction. It felt implied here, and I hope that that is the direction we're going because I love it now. Whereas, yeah, like Jasmine, I think it could be interesting with her because Jasmine has. I feel like part of Jasmine's arc as a parent has been that she's been perhaps too lenient on Lucy at times, and like I would love to kind of see that come crashing down for her if she did become aware and it was like, oh, I gave you like a bit of slack, and this is what you fucking did with it. Like,
Mm,
um, so that would be fun alongside just like I think yeah, like all the stuff of how she respects and trusts Lucy and all that, like how it would work with that. But yeah, Connor's
mm,
Connor's the best one for it to happen to. Brett would be fun in the fairy sort of way, like I would enjoy it as a reader. I wouldn't wish it on Verona as a person.
mm, mm. Yeah. Yeah. It would be funny. I would love to see Brett as a practitioner, but it would be
Yeah.
horrible.
Like the
Any
obvious thought, sorry, that comes from
mm,
like this whole thing that's going on is obviously like America comes and attacks Avery and her family. It's quite explicit here that Massa told her to attack Avery and her family. So if we can kind of assume that different people are going for the other two, which I
mm,
feel like we can kind of assume. Um so that means like okay, somebody's going after Lucy and her mom. That's awful, and I can't wait to read that. That'll be traumatic. Who's the poor sucker who's gonna like get to Brett and then like, you can almost just see Verona being like, "Well, go on then." Like, "Oh, you're gonna put my dad in the hospital? Okay, just, like, blow a slight breeze at him." Like
Imagining the scene of America Ted going after Brett and Verona instead, and Verona
I,
like fucks with America and then just lets her attack Brett.
I almost hope it's Eloise, just because I feel like Eloise is going to rock up and be like, "Let's do some damage to Verona," and then like look at the connection between Verona and Brett and be like, "Well, guys, this ain't it. Let's say,
Mm.
go get Jeremy or something." Um, but like, I feel like any connection manipulator is just going to look at like Verona and Brett standing next to each other and be like, "No, we don't need to fuck with this guy."
Yeah, yeah. Good stuff. Um, oh yeah, I like what Fran said. I didn't know they had another couch ghoul. Um, so yeah, their chill, relaxing dinner is interrupted by America Ted, who attacks Avery and her dad. Avery isn't able to get help very quickly, and the fight starts out going not so hot.
Fucking America! Like I feel like my instinct is to like America and think she's cool. And it's like every time she's not in the story for a bit, I keep thinking, oh, she's not that bad. And then she comes back into the story and it's just always like, she's just always the fucking worst. Like, I really want to like America, but she's a piece of shit. Like, just every
Yeah,
time. She's
she's the
always
worst.
beating up Avery.
Yeah.
She's trying to poop on her dad. I also think, like,
Yeah, a normal thing to do.
I'm naturally inclined to like her just because her practice is so fun. Like she's like vomiting stuff out, which is hilarious. And then like
Mm.
when Avery tries to call Verona and Lucy with connection stuff, America overrides it by saying "fuck you" 3 times. So like as she's going like Verona, 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 she's like "fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," and that works, which is just hilarious.
Yeah, it's pretty
Like
good.
America has one of the coolest practices, and I keep forgetting how much I despise her as a person every time she's not on screen.
Yeah, she's I really wish she was cool and on side, you know?
Yeah, people are drawing connections between my feelings for America the character and America the country, and that's not entirely misplaced. That's a very good point.
um yeah, it's a brutal fight, isn't it? The interesting thing to me is Avery is maybe the weakest of the three Kenneteers in a straight fight. Not that she's weak, but just like Lucy and Verona are hardcore. But Avery's strength really lies in her connections, and that's what is cut off from her in this fight.
Mm.
And that's what she tries to. She eventually kind of, in air quotes, wins this encounter through those connections. But when she's cut off from them, when she doesn't have them, she's so vulnerable.
Yeah, it's not just that. I think Avery can really handle her own, but is she like out in the open? Like I think part of why she also really gets beaten down here is they're in this small bathroom, and I think Avery's so movement focused, like she runs laps around you, and so in a small enclosed space, she's also out of her element. Like if this fight had been happening in a big empty parking lot, I'd give Avery much better odds.
Mm,
Although
yeah.
also, like, yeah, America has also learnt from the previous fight. There's that moment where she has goblin eyes embedded in the back of her head. Again, America, so close to being cool.
Mm, yeah. Very close to
Um,
being chill. Yeah. The,
but
the
like,
eyes
yeah,
in the back of the head thing is good.
to your actual point, like, just yeah, like Avery is essentially scrapping, just kind of getting the shit beaten out of her by America here. There's the call to liberty that goes out, which like doesn't really work except to distract America at one point.
It
Which
definitely slows her down until I feel like it's like I feel like if the call hadn't gone through, Toadie and Co showing up might not have been enough to get her to back down, but it adds up.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, the Liberty thing I think really highlights to me as well, just like how much I hated like America as a person right here, because well, America does the opposite of Connor. She doesn't really listen to Liberty like at all. She's like, Avery made you cry, and Liberty's like, I don't know, like you're not listening to
You
me.
don't
This isn't what
understand
I
the
want,
situation, yeah.
and like America just like kind of bats it away, is not really a concern. Like I think the reason I do enjoy America as a character right now is because she's such an interesting, like, we've obviously had this whole setup with Anthem and like the fun hating Anthem thing, because you kind of hate him, but also he did take a step against misogyny, so you don't fully hate him.
Mm,
Like he was really kind of toxically positive about like his daughter's well-being,
mm,
and what we're seeing is like Liberty and America right now are on kind of just opposite sides of what he wants there. Like Liberty has gotten all the benefits, but she has yet to become like the angry piece of shit he wants. Whereas I think like it's in this chapter, America is there right now. Like she is. America's fallen victim to the shitty parts of like Anthem's whole shtick.
Mm,
And that's kind of a really fun space to explore, like to have them as contrasts of America is just that one step further down towards Anthem and how much worse she is because of it.
mm. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the Teds. What an interesting family.
They must have fun family dinners.
Yeah, I wonder what that household looks like. Um, but luckily, this fight is resolved when three familiar strangers show up to help defuse the situation. Um, and what a fun reveal this is,
Yeah, it's so
that
good.
these goblins have glamoured themselves up. Like, it's so wild, it's so brilliant, and it just is great. Toady gets to drop the bomb that Anthem is the one who caused him to have to leave them. Like, I don't know, it's just like great stuff.
Yeah, well, especially because like to go onto the like Liberty and America are like one step apart on Anthem's intended trajectory.
Yeah.
Toadstool went out of his way to keep Liberty from learning about Anthem. Like he specifically got Avery and Co to not tell her.
Mm,
And it was because he didn't want to cause her that pain, and because he was also worried it might like edge him further out and push her closer to him in a way that would make her harder to reach later.
mm,
So, like, for both compassionate and tactical reasons, he didn't want to tell Liberty. Whereas now that America is like one or two steps further down, it's like she both needs this brutal truth as a kind of like wake up call. Like, she needs to be hit by this emotional bombshell to cause her the pain to reconsider. And then, like, also tactically, it causes her to question the path that she's already gone down. So, like, I just love this comparison of it was smart and compassionate not to tell Liberty, whereas America is so far gone that it's like you need to hit her hard where it hurts in order to make herself reflect. Like she's caused this pain for herself, essentially.
mm. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think Toady takes any delight in dropping this, but, he kind of clearly needed to at this situation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And well, I think he doesn't really delight in causing her pain, but also like he. I'm trying to find the way to phrase what I mean. Like it's it's like so necessary that he does. I think he enjoys not having to keep it a secret from her anymore. It's just not an ideal situation to be telling her this, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
For sure.
yeah, and then also obviously goblins wearing glamour seems like a
Yeah.
big deal.
It does, isn't it?
Um,
It's funny.
we've only heard about that happening one other time, which was when the Oni were forming in the east.
Mm,
Which feels like Mussa will be able to use it to justify his whole take on Kennet because, like, I remember when he gave his like speech at the end of Arc 13, he was like, "You've got an Oni here, all your others are unbound and creepy and like." I forget the word he used, but like they're anti the system, and I need to shut this town down. And if that was his sort of rhetoric that's anti Kennet, Goblins wearing glamour feels like he can double down on that sort of rhetoric because this is very much like the goblins redefining their labels.
mm. Yeah. 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 Interesting. I like I mean, this is what Kenneth's all about, right? So
Yeah,
it's great that this can happen here.
exactly. But it is further proof for Mussa's anti-Kennet rhetoric, which is interesting. It's just like another escalation or something, I guess. Like
Mm,
it proves his point, but also because his point is a dog shit take.
mm,
I loved this moment with like Dee Dee. I love how she's got tape. Like the glamour had to like stick tape to give her the bat nose still. I thought that was funny. But there's this moment where I think it's Toadswallow tells her to take a picture of her and her human getup for her like human boyfriend,
mm.
which just was hilarious to me, and I really hope that she did that.
Yes, I hope so.
Especially, I honestly I hope his take was that he doesn't like it that much.
Because it's not
Or
authentic to who she is.
yeah, like I mean, look, we don't know this guy, but he's
Mm,
dating a goblin. I have to assume he's not very shallow.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I could almost see. Oh, actually no, but because also he's into goblins, I can see him liking it, but as a kink thing, like he'll be like, "Oh, like you should wear this for some sort of sexual endeavor,
Mm,
but not like not around the house."
mm,
That
yeah.
feels like the most goblin take is, yeah, let's use this for sex.
Yeah. It's very goblin. Um So yeah, Avery and Connor leave after America kind of stands down and leaves. And yeah, Connor is maybe starting to be aware. We'll
Mm.
see.
It's worth pointing out. So this is when Connor comes out here before the bit where we're teased with him maybe becoming aware.
Mm,
The first thing he actually says when they come out here is he talks to Avery about like seeing Nora on her phone,
mm,
which I really like. This is maybe like low key the top Connor moment in the chapter because it's first of all, it's him not doing what Avery did and keeping a bit of a secret. It's a very casual way of being open about the fact that he saw the picture when she gave him her phone.
yeah,
And it's also like the whole conversation in the diner, not an ice cream place, a diner, was Avery wanted him to treat her more like a daughter and like,
yes,
worry about her life and stuff. And like so him, you know, they just got the shit beaten out of them. Avery clearly doesn't want to talk about it with him. And so he comes out here and the first thing he says is like talks to her about her girlfriend.
yeah. It's
Like
a great moment.
yeah, like this is exactly what she was asking for. Like it's so honest and what she was after. I love it as like a yeah. I hope Connor is becoming aware because if he's having moments like this, I think he's ready.
Mm, yeah, um, yeah. He's great. Connor's a champ, and that's where we end the chapter on moments of Connor being a champion who maybe will become aware and become the fourth Kennedy.
Oh, nobody did an animal mask for Connor as their honorary Kenneteer when we did that question a few weeks ago.
Mm.
Who
And
would have
more
known?
fool them. They were all wrong. um, but yeah, that's the end of our chapters for this week. Should we get into some predictions, Elliot? What's going to happen next in
Yeah.
the story? People think they know, and they've told us what they think.
Yeah, so that was a very BoJack Horseman way of introducing that. I don't know if that was on purpose. It was very Hollywood stars and celebrities. What do they know? Do they know things?
That's a good
Um,
point. Been watching too much Mr. Peanut Butter.
but yeah, sorry, I've got one from Lapsed Classicist, which I've already started reading out, which is
Hmm.
Mrs. Founder's form will include clouds of color changing petals obscuring her face at all times.
Okay.
And I really like this. Because I don't have the first idea what Mrs. Founder's form is going to look like. So I almost just brought this one, not because I necessarily agree or disagree with Lapsed Classic's take, but because I wanted to chat with you and the rest of the chat here about what we reckon it could be as well.
I feel like
Like,
we're missing the what's the what's the backstory to this prediction? You know what I mean? Like
oh,
why?
Mrs. talked a lot about how like her form will change when she lands as the meteor.
No, I know, but like, why will it include clouds of color changing petals?
Oh, because that was what was in the stuck in place.
Ah, I see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I mean, to branch away from the topic I've just brought up, and please, like people in the chat, hit us up with thoughts on Mrs. Founder form. I also wonder if like it'll be less physically based, but like if Kenneth Found is a part of Kenneth, but also like separate, she's like, is Miss going to be close to the animus of it? Like, is she like the Liss of Kenneth Found? In which case, does she combine with Liss to an extent? How?
Hmm.
What is her relationship to Liss as the core center of Can It Found? Like that feels like it'll have to be a
Best
thing.
friend.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, are they gonna be close work colleagues, like sharing a desk?
Hmm.
Metaphorically, of course. I mean, they could make a physical desk if they want to, but I just can't imagine that will be fun for Miss.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't know. Well, it really. I. It could be anything. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a sense of what we should expect with Mrs. Founder form. Like, usually, I at least have ideas that are wrong.
Hmm.
On stuff like this, I'm like, oh, this is how it works, and then we find out. Like, when we thought, oh, the path that they'll choose will be the promenade, and then it was the stuck in place, and it was like, oh, I see now why that makes like more sense.
Hmm.
This one, I don't even have wrong ideas that I'm confident in. I just have no idea.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What could it be? Who knows? It's a difficult one. Um, yeah, so I've put out a prediction from a user, Rod. who has predicted if Musa takes lordship of Kennet, but also the Kennetiers fail to bring about third Kennet, will Verona be forsworn? Which I think is an interesting question. Like the question of if the Kennetiers fail hard enough, the judges won't have the power to convict Verona for the challenge that they've set to her, which maybe won't matter if they've lost to Musa anyway, but I think it will be interesting.
I suppose this is a matter of if that deal has already been laid, is it too could she get out of this by just skedaddling to the paths or to Australia? Like, I would think no. I would think it would chase her to those places too. So I don't. I think it would still be like I think the power has like already been allocated. Like this judgment has
Mm,
already been made. It's like a
mm,
curse or a mark that's been placed on her already.
interesting. I don't know.
But
Maybe.
I could be wrong. It just like, yeah, my question is because that implies that the reason the judges wouldn't be able to do it anymore is because she's out of their jurisdiction, in which case she could just move to Thunder Bay,
But I don't
like,
think
and
that
get
would.
out of it.
It's not that she's out of their jurisdiction. It's like they don't have jurisdiction anywhere anymore, right? Like, you know
Oh,
what I
they've still
mean?
got a few territories, I think. I don't think Canada is the dead last place.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Okay. Maybe that's
But you're right. Okay, yeah, no,
maybe
if
not
we
then.
fully defeat the judges and remove
Yeah.
all
So,
territory from their hands, then yeah, maybe.
like, if they lose all their conceptual power.
That feels like a bad, like, that feels like a we're the baddies moment, though, if Verona pivots that hard.
Sure. Maybe that's fair enough.
Although, yeah, I guess I wouldn't be able to blame her to avoid getting forsworn. I think there's honestly not many lines I wouldn't cross to stop being forsworn. I don't think that's the whole problem with this like business.
Yeah.
Like the things being at threat of forswearing raises the stakes so dramatically. Of course, people are going to cross lines.
Mm, mm, yeah. I don't know. I think it's. I mean, again, this is kind of what we talked about earlier, right? Like Charles as a judge, Musa is trying to dethrone the judges. I'm very happy for these two to just fight each other. I don't really want either of them to win.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, this comes back to what we're talking about at the start of the episode. When is
Mm.
Charles going to do some shit, please? Like,
Is he? Well, maybe he never will.
like I'd almost enjoy just the narrative dissatisfaction of Charles not really ever doing anything
Mm.
because they beat Massa here, and then it's like, oh, where's Charles? And it's like he's too weak to do anything anyway. Like just like, yeah, well, you deserve that, you like maggotus piece of shit. Like,
Yeah.
enjoy your judgeship over fuck all.
Yeah. Um, yeah, good stuff. Uh, so yeah, I mean that's there's a predictions. If you want to make a prediction yourself, you can find the link to our Pale Predictor form in the show notes down below. But we've also got our discussion question that we've been running for the past fortnight.
Yeah. So we have been asking people for 2 weeks, what sort of conveniences would you add to your domain? And I had a lot of fun reading the responses to this. So many great ideas.
Mm.
But before we get to those, I actually want to start by a response we got from Cyan Cicada, who responded to the
Yeah.
to the
Okay.
Reddit post on this like episode in question with I don't know what the hell I don't know what the hell any of this means, and it's very exciting. I'm going to read Packed and Pale and I'll report back in a month. Which I don't know what they were doing in our thread that
Mm.
I don't yeah, anyway, so on the off chance they're listening to the podcast as part of
A
their
month
catch up,
later.
hey,
Yeah.
hey, how's
Welcome.
it going? But also, I can't imagine they are. That's a lot of catch up to do. So anyway, I've started a timer. In 1 month, I'm gonna like at them on Reddit and check that they've read Packed and Pale in a month. That's a lot of words for a month.
Yeah. Well, let's see how they go.
I enjoy somebody popping into a thread 2 million words into a story for a companion podcast and going, "What is this? I'm gonna read it."
Yeah. It's strange. It's a strange thing to do. Speaking of strange, let's talk about I'm easily impressed's answer, shall we?
Yeah.
The most J.K. Rowling answer I had ever seen. I'm easily impressed wants their domain to automatically clean up urine. And when I
Yeah. So
saw the
wait, but wait.
notification for this answer, I was like, oh, I'll read it later and then it will make sense. And Hasn't yet.
No, I read it for the first time this morning, and it raised more questions than gave me answers. I'm easily impressed. I'm easily impressed brings up the example of like not wanting to have when you wake up to go to the toilet in the middle of the night, it's annoying to aim, I guess, if someone born with the more penile genitalia. Um, but I mean, I guess my solution would be a domain that doesn't make me pee in the middle of the night, rather than specifically urine cleanup.
It's very. It really reminds me of that old J.K. Rowling talking about how
The
wizards just
poop.
used to poop everywhere and then magic it
Yeah.
away. It's like a classic J.K. Rowlingism. So yeah, bit wild.
I did enjoy that answer just for the what the fuckness of reading it. Um,
Mm,
I guess I also want to talk about the White Duke's answer. They basically said they wanted to make infinite copies of themselves. So they went into like a bunch of detail about how they would make copies of themselves that I assume are like limited to the domain. Like you can't just, photocopy yourself in the domain and have 100 of you leave.
mm,
But they even had a whole system for the copy's memories being downloaded to you at the end of the day.
mm,
So you've got like full on like multiple lives going on inside your domain, and they're like, oh yeah, it gives you more free time to read that book, watch that TV show, because you can just dedicate one version of yourself to read the book for that day.
mm.
Which is definitely, I don't know if this is for me. I don't trust myself. Like I'd worry that my clone was going to kill me. Um, but I appreciate the idea behind this one.
Yeah, it's a wild one. I feel like it would be expensive. Like this feels like you're living, 10 lives at once or whatever. That feels like it would take a solid amount of power to do.
Yeah, the White Duke mentions using a bunch of stuff, including glamour, which means that you're dealing with fairy, I think. And I mean, the best case scenario we seem to have seen for working with fairies is Guillemot, and that's concerning.
Mm, mm, yeah. Um, which one do I want to pull out next? I liked Landis 963's one. Um, a lot of really practical stuff. You know what I mean? I liked the ones
Yeah.
that were really practical. They spoke to me. That's the kind of stuff I would do as well. Orbital Oracle also had a really practical idea of like having objects move back to where their designated spot when you're finished with them, so you don't have to
Yes.
worry about losing things that you haven't put away. But
Orbital
yeah,
Oracle's one, sorry, felt to me like the one I would get the most material benefit out of. It probably wouldn't have been my first idea, but I think stuff going back to its spot, and also I think
mm,
they mentioned flickering lights to remind them of when it was time to like eat
to
or
eat dinner
sleep
and
or go
stuff. Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
I was like, I think that would be necessary for me. It wouldn't have been my idea, but reading it, I was like, oh, I do need that in my life. I'm constantly setting alarms, forcing myself to put shit away in its spot. Like, yeah, 100% I would get a lot of use out of that.
You can you could make it so that you know how you can set up things that like only let you go on Facebook for an hour a day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like you could set it up so that your house physically didn't let you do the things. Like you could set up such healthy habits and your house would enforce them
uh,
for you.
I fucking love that. It's like, yeah, no, the PlayStation physically won't turn on during work hours
Yeah,
in the
right?
domain.
Like yeah, it's good stuff. Um Anywho, back to Atlantis 963. Yeah, like there's some really cool practical ideas in here as well, like views that change when you open and close the blinds, or like being able to reconfigure your rooms by having. They talked about this like Rubik's cube esque way of shuffling rooms around so that they could
Mm.
connect differently. Just like all kinds of cool stuff.
Yeah. Oh, but also inside each of those rooms, like there were multiple gravity wells, so it's kind of like you could have like different furniture on each wall of the cube,
Mm,
um, which like is a good use of space and just like a cool idea. So yeah, like, I love that idea of yeah, like having your living room on the ground, but then the kitchen's on the wall, and you just reorient yourself, and you're in the kitchen.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah.
I think they
Some
also
cool
mentioned
stuff.
like views that change every time you open and close the blinds, which is a fun extra detail.
Yes, it was. It would be really fun. I would really like it.
I wanted to pull out Bella Tal's answer, which started with a typo. They said Verona S, which I don't know what that's about. I think they meant Verona A.
Mm.
but they talked a lot about they want their practice to be based around music, and that's always made it hard for them to pick an implement because they wanted well, their preferred instrument is the piano, and obviously pianos don't really suit an implement. But if they had a domain, then they'd be more able to do something like stick a piano in the domain and use it as an implement. Yes, I was also thinking of a guitar Corford or what's that? Is it an accordion? You know, the one that's got like a keyboard and then you like squeeze it and open it?
Mm.
You use an accordion implement. That would
Um,
be hilarious.
yeah, I don't know what it's called.
I think it's called an
An
accordion.
accordion? Is it? No, it's like a. Accordions have like a different. No, maybe it is an accordion. Um.
This is the picture of an accordion from
Oh
Wikipedia that
yeah.
I've
Oh
just
no, that
posted
is
in
the
our
one I was
chat.
thinking of. I was getting confused with something else then, I
Yeah.
think.
So Beloctal, accordion implement. It's a
Mm.
great idea. What could possibly people will think you're really cool.
Practitioners will love how stuck in the past you are, I think.
But yeah, no, but they even said like if they're like committing to their implement being static in their domain, then they could even like they don't even have to settle for a grand piano. They could go for like a pipe organ or a carillon, which
Mm.
apparently is like a piano, but it's tied like each key is tied to a bell.
Mm.
So it's like in a churchy thing where you have a bell tower and you got like 20 bells up the top, and each one's tied to a key, so you play on the bells. Anyway,
Mm. Mm.
I thought that was cool.
Um. Yeah.
I mean, I do worry by locking your implement into your domain like that. I think you limit yourself in a way. I mean, you could.
Yeah,
There
for
are plenty of
sure.
people who don't have implements, so it's not that limiting. But it's kind of like it's definitely concentrating your power even further inside your domain.
Mm.
Which maybe that's the goal.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe. I mean, it might mean you're more specialized in those circumstances. Like, yeah, it's a trade-off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um.
Tweedle Stupido, the third Tweedle brother, suggests having their domain always be that perfect room temperature, and they linked that that bit from Community where they have the air conditioning repair school with the perfect room.
Mm.
I really liked that because that would absolutely I would have my domain constantly be like 3 degrees below that. I like it a little bit chilly.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. Um. Another practical one. We got the Wizard of Retcon, who was talking about like floors that clean themselves, water pressure whenever you want it, the right temperature, the right pressure. Um. Keep food from spoiling, like
Hmm.
all the classic practical kinds of things.
Yeah, you're right. I really liked how sensible that answer was.
Yeah.
The last one I wanted to bring up was from Propaganda Pagoda, who mentioned basically they wanted to rework the lighting because they said well, they're quite a tall person and they have like one light in their kitchen, so they're often blocking it when they're chopping stuff
Mm.
because they're between the light and like the kitchen bench. So they wanted to like reorient the way lighting works, so there's just kind of ambient lighting,
Mm.
like you'd get in a video game.
Mm.
Um, and I really like that idea. I'm also sick of overhead lighting or shitty lamps or something. I just want ambient lighting.
Mm. Yeah. That would be fun. They also talked about having slower time, which I think would be pretty expensive, but maybe you can reframe it as like instead of slowing time for everybody, you're just more efficient at the stuff you do. So instead of slowing
Yeah,
time that you get so you can sleep more, your sleeping is more restful or whatever. And maybe that has kind of a
yeah.
similar effect, but without as being as problematic for the universe or whatever.
Like similarly, like don't make it so that time is slow. Just like make it so that your brain runs gooder.
Mm.
Like I'm just able to concentrate better, and I like think like maybe I think a bit faster. Like don't speed up time in the whole domain. Just speed up time in your brain.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, so some cool responses. Thanks everyone that responded.
Yeah. And with that, I'm just now realizing, Ruben, I never actually got a word from you on whether you like this new discussion question.
Yeah, no, I like it.
Okay, cool. Our new discussion question is which goblin is best and why?
Hmm. Um, we will accept also if you're giving a goblin that isn't Toady, D, or Bubble, what their fairy glamour human form would look like.
I like that. I like that. Or if we haven't seen their weapon form, what that would look like.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
True,
we
true.
still we still don't know what Gashwad's weapon form is, and it's starting to annoy me.
Um, but yeah, if you want to leave your answer to that discussion question, you can do it in the discussion thread down below.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of well, one goblin's already starchly ahead in the chat here.
Mm-hmm.
Another reminder about the fan art contest. You've got till April 1st. There's $100 in there. So draw, craft, photograph something to do with Takeover and a Wild Bow work.
Yep. Yeah. Um, yeah. Why don't you come and follow us on Twitter at PowerReflectCast? There's all kinds of fun stuff that you can find there.
Yep, and don't forget to stop by our Twitter at PowerReflectCast. We got memes. We got
Now,
notices.
I did just say that.
You did just do that one? Damn
I
it.
did just do that one. Yeah.
Normally it's you who does that. I've been
Yeah.
hoisted by my own petard.
Gotcha. But why don't you check out our website, duffmedia.com. There's all kinds of cool stuff on there. You can find more info about the fan art contest. You can find all the other shows on the Duff Media Network as well.
Yep, and we've got a Patreon, patreon.com/doofmedia. You know, all of the things like the fan art contest are entirely funded by our patrons. So they're also the ones who vote when it comes down to picking who wins that $100. So if you
Yeah.
want that power at your fingertips, you're that power hungry. Patreon.com/doofmedia.
Yes. And of course, while you're on Patreon, make sure you stop by Wildbow's Patreon, because if you don't give him a good amount of money to continue writing these stories, then you'll get stuck in the place of having to keep reading them. I
Wait,
couldn't
I
think of
thought
a
you were
good end to
trying.
that sentence.
That's a terrible way to, because I mean, I'd happily get stuck there. What are you talking about,
Yeah.
Ruben?
I started the sentence and I didn't have an end for it. It just happens.
That's how I usually do these Wild Bow outros too. I hope I'll find it halfway through making the reference.
And with that, the show's over. See you, folks.